Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Again, Madam Secretary, thank you. As you know, 10 people in my home state of Washington have already died from coronavirus, and it is really a frightening time for students and families in my state, and it will be across the country. I understand you created a task force and launched a web page with some information and resources, and as you know, I sent you a letter yesterday with questions about those and other efforts to prepare for this continued spread and communicate with frontline stakeholders, school districts, state educational agencies, institutions of higher education, about how they can best protect their students, their teachers, and other staff. Given the urgency of this issue, I hope you can respond fully to my letter, but I wanted to ask you a few questions today. CDC has urged schools to prepare for the continued spread of coronavirus. How is the department coordinating now with federal, state, and local public health officials to develop preparedness and response plans related to the virus?
Senator, from the start, President Trump and the whole administration have been focused very keenly on preparing individuals and at the most local level, preparing them with information and preparing across government. So the working group that has been stood up in the Department of Education is in regular, frequent, multiple times daily contact with the CDC for updates from them on latest developments. As you noted, we have created a web page for schools and districts for anyone affiliated with education to go and see the latest information from the CDC, links to that. We've established a dedicated email at the department and can help refer on specific questions through that email. And then as you noted in your opening comments, we have just released guidance from the Office for Civil Rights reminding schools of their responsibilities around ensuring that students are not discriminated against based on their ethnicity or heritage. And we've also released guidance for the higher education world, talking about the multiple different flexibilities that we will be open to, and again, depending on the development of the circumstances that we will ensure happen. And then I think also importantly, Mark Schultz, the Assistant Secretary for OSERS, is working on updating the 2009 H1N1 plan and guidance around students with disabilities.
Do you know when that'll be available?
It should be very soon. I know it did not seem that there had to be a lot of amendments or changes made.
Okay, because as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I know North Shore School District in my home state has now announced as in the middle of the night that they'll be closed for 2 weeks. They said 26 of the schools in their district had been affected via direct or indirect exposure at that point. The absentee rate was 20%, and 16% of their employees are over 60 in Washington State right now. If you're over 60, they're asking you to stay home. So we will see more of this. And because of that, I wanted to ask you specifically, and we need information quickly, as this continues to spread, how are you talking to districts about students with particular needs, students with disabilities, students who come from food insecure families, students experiencing homelessness? As school districts close, what is your guidance to those schools to deal with those difficult populations?
Well, thank you. I would, refer to some of the things I just mentioned, and we are working hard to make sure the guidance around students with disabilities is updated and released very soon here. I know that that's a need and a necessity. We're going to continue to be working very hard along with all of my colleagues across government to ensure that all of the resources and information that we have here is made available as quickly and as promptly as possible to those at the local district, local communities being able to have that information and updated regularly to make the best decisions for their communities is certainly our goal.
Well, the challenges are going to be real, and I would just let all my colleagues know there's a lot of parents going, how do I deal with daycare? How do I go to work? I don't have paid sick leave. I don't have the ability to stay home from work and care for my kids and pay rent, so the impacts of this are going to grow. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Madam Secretary. I just have to say, I am really in awe of the courage of the women and men who have shared personally with me their experiences of sexual harassment and assault, so they can make sure that it doesn't happen to any other person. And I am very concerned that your proposed rule would discourage those survivors from coming forward and weaken protections for students and allow schools actually to shirk their responsibility. I expect the department to make it easier for students to come forward with their stories and make sure that our schools do everything possible to make sure that students are not deterred from obtaining an education because of a sexual assault or harassment that goes unaddressed. Now, I know that you told the House Appropriations Committee last week that you couldn't answer any questions on your proposed rule, but I want you to know I remain very concerned that it appears as though you didn't listen to those survivors like I have, and that schools will not be held accountable if your rule is finalized as proposed. Now, I do know that you have announced recent Office for Civil Rights initiatives to combat harassment and discrimination, the Outreach Prevention Education and Non-Discrimination Center, and the Title IX K-12 Enforcement Initiative. And I do look forward to seeing how both of those are going to be implemented. But I remain very concerned that those sound like nice ideas, but won't have any teeth or appropriate resources to be productive. And I'm concerned about that, because I've been pushing for a time now for additional resources for OCR to investigate civil rights violations, and OCR has been very slow to hire staff over the past 3 years. They average about 37 external hires a year, and in the last 2 years of the prior administration, OCR hired an average of 87 external hires per year. So with an almost 5,000 case backlog at the end of fiscal year 2019, I believe that there's really a clear need for more help to ensure that every person's complaint is thoroughly investigated in a timely manner. So I wanted to ask you, why did hiring slow so significantly when Congress actually provided the resources and direction to hire more staff?
Well, Senator, first let me say I share your concern that survivors of sexual assault anywhere at any time have the opportunity and have a clear path to make sure that their stories and their cases are heard, and our rule will certainly seek to do just that. I have listened to and talked with survivors as well, and I share your concerns, so I hope you won't characterize it any differently. With regard to the Office for Civil Rights, we have had a high priority on hiring for that office. We currently have over 520 attorneys. We have hired in the last year 79 attorneys. This is a very high priority for that office and continues to be. But I will just say that for the last 3 fiscal years, that office has resolved more than 2,400 more complaints than it received on average each year. And that's despite an almost 100% increase in the annual caseload or annual complaints filed since 2008. It has also it's not just closing more cases than the previous administration did, but it is requiring more institutions to implement significant policy changes. So there are findings with these cases, and I'm really very proud of the work that the office has been doing. We are continuing to stay focused on ensuring that all students that have filed cases and complaints, that they're being considered and in a timely manner.
Can you just tell me how many new staff for OCR will be hired this year?
Whatever the goal is, I think it's another about 100, somewhere between 60 and 100 additional.
You will hire
now,
those
of course, there's attrition, and so there's probably some makeup there. But these are talented people that we have to identify and find. And
how many of those new staff will be dedicated to your new initiatives, and how will OCR's general investigatory functions actually be implicated by these new efforts?
Well, they will be broken down between those different functions as appropriate, but the goal continues to be.
Can you tell me how many staff will actually be directed to the new initiatives?
To doing the K-12 investigation? I don't know the exact number. I'll be happy to get that to you. Each of the 12 different regions is going to be conducting audits under this initiative to ensure that K-12 schools are properly reporting these incidents. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the reports from the Chicago Public Schools where an investigation there suggested with the civil rights data collection, nearly 10,000 cases.
Well, my concern is that you're outlining new initiatives. But if we don't have the personnel to deal with the backlog and these new initiatives, because hiring isn't enough, we will not be able to complete what you are proposing.
No, I appreciate that, and we are very focused on hiring as a top priority, and Assistant Secretary Marcus continues to be very, very focused on that, as do I, and we will continue to hire capable and qualified individuals to continue to do the work that they importantly do.